Hey there, welcome back to What the Flick. Christy and Alonso and Ben and Matt. I can just rattle off their names without even looking at them. I just know who's in what chair at this point. We've got, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, a Crazy Rich Asians sequel planned. It had a tremendous opening, much larger than anybody thought it would. It made like $35 million over the 5-day, which is exceeding expectations. John M. Chu is moving forward with plans to direct, whatever that in Hollywood tabloid speak or the trade speak, moving forward. No one has signed anything yet, but there are other books in the Crazy Rich Asians universe, and so they're going to do more. And apparently, this might expand what happens with Gemma Chan's character at the end of the original.
It would kind of have to, because we get 5 seconds of Harry Shum Jr. and he gets like third billing in the movie. So yeah, I imagine that's going to be.
I mean, again, I like that they get us all to act like it's news. I mean, obviously that was the intent. They just had to wait to see whether there was money.
Of course, yeah, no, it was all contingent on how opening weekend went. I'm sure everybody who was signed for the first movie, it's in the contract that they got to come back for 2 and 3.
I love that when we talk about John M. Chu moving forward, right? To me, that's the equivalent of he calls his agent and tells his agent, call the studio and tell them I said dibs.
We're doing this, and so who knows when that's going to happen? He's also directing a film version of the Lin-Manuel Miranda musical In the Heights, and so he's got that coming out in 2020. So he's a little busy.
I'm stealing this tweet as long as we're quoting tweets of people who we don't recall.
Sure.
But I mean, Crazy Rich Asians proving finally that America has a limitless appetite for watching the really good-looking, incredibly wealthy people on screen. I mean, it really like for all the talk of how it's a breakthrough and an entirely East Asian cast for the first time since Joy Luck Club, but again, it's a movie about rich people acting rich, handsome rich people.
But if Hollywood's going to keep making that movie, then every community needs to have their own version.
Right, but you could say that same thing about Black Panther, right? They're royalty and they're crazy rich.
And gorgeous.
And gorgeous.
Yeah. So we'll follow that as it comes along. Also, speaking of movies that we're excited about, or we were excited about until this news came out, Danny Boyle is no longer going to direct the next James Bond movie. He was going to direct the 25th James Bond movie and pulled out over the proverbial creative differences.
Well, we think of the Marvel movies as being like the wall of no auteur zone. The Broccoli's have had a iron clamp on this property for ages, and they're not giving it up anytime soon. So there's always talk about, Tarantino wants to do one, or Christopher Nolan wants to do one. It's not going to happen while the Broccoli's are in charge. They are going to pick a nice functionary who they can push around, and we're going to get the kind of movies we get.
I would say though that Skyfall, which is a movie that I love, has a definite voice and an eye to it and a look to it, and it's not like a generic throwaway Bond.
No. I'm not saying there aren't good Bond movies, there aren't ones that stand out, but overall, they are not going to let anybody who's going to color too far out of the lines get their hands on.
It's their property, not an. That was why they went with Lazenby, right? For On Her Majesty's Secret Service was a belief that it isn't about Connery. It's about us. We control Bond. We can make you find me a handsome guy who can run, and we'll turn that guy
put a tuxedo on him.
into Bond. And if Lazenby hadn't gotten the worst career advice and hadn't been so enormously full of himself at the time, I think they would have been proven right. He would have gone. He would have made 4 or 5 Bonds, and he would have been Roger Moore.
Yeah, and Danny Boyle's definite style to him that sounded very exciting in this milieu. So,
do they have a name for that Bond yet? Because they ought to just call
Bond 25. It's Daniel Craig's last Bond, but also
they ought to just call it Bond 25.
Right, and which shows you that there is no identity to it. And also, we're in the middle of pondering: should Idris Elba be the next Bond after Daniel Craig is gone?
So well, he said
why not?
He said no, he's not going to be.
No, did he say no definitively?
He's recently said in an interview no. I'm wondering how long before the Broccoli's try and figure out a way to make Bond into a shared universe and have spin-off characters and have a new movie every year or a couple movies a year.
Interesting.
But then they can get the whole band, like a Q movie and an M movie.
The Pussy Galore Chronicles.
On a private conversation, which maybe if that ever exists here, the only good movie idea I've ever had in my life was for a Bond movie. The only single good idea I've had in my life.
All right, we'll go call the Broccoli's.
Take a meeting.
See how that goes. Also, Peter Jackson, speaking of visual stylists, Peter Jackson is doing a documentary about World War I with some never before seen footage of World War I. And it seems like sort of a departure for him. It's going to premiere at the London Film Festival. But he's taking all this old vintage archival footage, he's colorizing it and converting it to 3D. I like how no one's interested in this. The silence is deafening from the table.
I think it's fascinating.
He has a great fake documentary. Did you ever see Forgotten Silver?
No.
It's about this like pioneer of New Zealand cinema.
Oh yeah.
And Leonard Maltin is in it, very convincing, as is Harvey Weinstein. And it's very funny. And I have shown that movie to people, and they did not know that it wasn't real until I told them.
That's funny.
I think it's a great idea. I hope it leads to a rash of World War I feature films. World War I is somebody on Twitter suggested today about that there needs to be a Fatty Arbuckle movie. Which I've also thought that that's a great story, similar era, a little bit later. World War I. I mean, that is war at its worst. I mean, for all the mistakes that we have made, that the United States has made, that other countries have made with their involvement in foreign countries and the sort of the reckless and careless disregard for human life and the pursuit of either the country's interest or corporate interests, but sinister interests or impure interests. World War I wiped out an entire generation of young men in Europe, and for absolutely nothing. World War II had a reason. Korea even had a reason, right? This had no reason whatsoever and was literally, that's why everybody should see Paths of Glory. It was literally just elites getting mad, flexing their muscle, and sacrificing every able-bodied 18 to 30-year-old man in Europe to do it.
And like a staggering number of people died.
That's right.
And I'm fascinated by the idea of somebody with the skill that Jackson does with effects and being able to convert things to 3D and what he can bring to the table, coupled with, you see hints of this in the first Lord of the Rings movie. He's a horror director, and I think that I at least am really interested to see, can he bring that ability to really communicate horror and terror into even just stock footage that he's put together?
I think it's great. And
Yeah.
Does it have to be 3D though?
Yeah, it's coming out almost 100 years to the day from the end of World War I in 1918. It's called They Shall Not Grow Old.
Just
so keep an eye on that.
Real quick example, World War I ended November 11th, 1918, and it was delayed. The armistice was signed at done by 7 o'clock in the morning, and they waited 4 hours to end at 11:11 on November 11th.
Wow.
Or 11 a.m. on November 11th, and of course, there's some number. So I read it years ago, and there's 748 dead people.
Right.
Because
the marketing had to be just
some
so.
commanders were right. They were like, we're just going to hold our position, but others were like, it's war. We're to take that hill at 10:30.
We need to move on. We have a trailer to show you for the Hal Ashby documentary. Take a look.
If you think about any of Hal Ashby's films, you're going to find discussion of class, you're going to find discussion of race.
He was so sensitive of what's right and what's wrong. He fought for us. But if you fight nose to nose with the head of a studio, you're going to lose.
This will most certainly not be a memo of any sort. It will be closer to the ramblings of a very, very angry young punk.
A lot of his wit, I think, came from pain. The way I think maybe humor does come from facing adversity.
Hal created such an inclusive environment. It almost felt like, you were all impulses in the same brain.
He wanted people clearly to love one another when society's trying.
There you go. So all-star cast talking about the great Hal Ashby.
Yeah, it's a pity that he's no longer around to do like De Palma, that first person
That was cool.
documentary.
Yeah.
But since he's not, we have all these other great people to tell the story.
Yeah, and it sounds like just about everyone contacted, hey, do you want to be involved in this? And they were like, yes, it's Hal Ashby, we do want to be involved.
We used to do the 5 favorite, or they still do at Rotten Tomatoes, the 5 favorite films interview series, and filmmakers and talent talk about 5 movies they love. And Being There is a movie that comes up all the time.
Yeah, Judd Apatow says it's a perfect comedy. So that comes out, it's called Hal, New York, September 7th, LA, September 14th. We will review it here on the show, I am certain.